Chapter 9. I was woke by sounds of people yelling. I didn't think I'd been asleep long. At least I didn't feel like I got enough sleep. Once again, fear surged through me. I couldn't imagine what could be causing such a commotion. I dragged myself out of my sling. I got up and ran up on deck. When I reached the deck, I could see Hatu shouting from the bridge. Sailors and natives stood below. Natives were screaming in agreement after his every word. "No! We have to go back, please! Our families are in there!" I was shocked. The captain who stood at his cabin door walked over to him. Hatu pleaded with him, pointing to the erupting volcano. "But you see what is happening. Our families are there. Please, you must help us." The natives shouted, "Please." Menes was also on the upper deck. He walked to the other side of Hatu and asked calmly, "Where is your village? Don't you think the lava would have reached it by now?" "No," Hatu pleaded. "Our village is on the other side of the island. Our families are there. We could save them before the lava reaches them." He looked soulfully at the captain and Menes. "Please." Again the natives echoed his plea. "Please." Menes moved next to the captain. "Son, we have to try to save their families. If we were them, we would want someone to help us." The ship got quiet, waiting for the captain to respond. The captain took a deep breath. He gave a proud look to Menes. He announced loudly, "My father is right. We must try to save these families. Tarber, turn us around." Tarber ran to the wheel, taking over from Kanar. "Yes, sir." The ship erupted in cheers, not only from the natives, but the sailors as well. My stomach turned over. I couldn't believe we were going back. I leaned against the door of the galley. More than anything, I didn't want to return to that horrible place. I watched as the ship changed course. Hatu turned to the captain. "Thank you. Our village is exactly on the other side of where we are now." He pointed towards the volcano, which continued spewing out red-hot lava. I stood there frozen. The ship moved around the island, moving closer to the other side. I had a knot in my stomach, fearing something horrible would happen. We had no idea what was on the other side of the island and if the lava reached it yet. The island wasn't that big. Perhaps the natives' families were already dead. I didn't want to know. I opened the door to the galley and snuck out before anyone could notice me. I was distraught. I never had cleaned myself up, so I went back down to my room to clean up and get dressed. After I was dressed, I went into the kitchen for some food. Pinwar looked like he was waiting for me. I wondered why Pinwar hadn't helped Menes and I before, except for a couple of times. He really had been a help while I was away. Before I could do it myself, Pinwar dished up a bowl of stew and handed me some bread. "Thanks." I could hardly speak. There was so much running through my mind. I took my bowl into the dining room and sat down. Before I even noticed I had no utensils, Pinwar put them down next to my bowl and also gave me a cup of water. He sat across from me. I suppose he saw the dismay on my face. "What is it?" he asked. "We're going back." I was on the edge of tears as I picked up my spoon. With a calm, soothing voice, Pinwar said, "Yes, to save lives. It is a good thing. I understand you went through some horrific experiences there, but you're home now. It will be okay." His words, "you're home now," hit me. Yes, in a way, the ship was my home. He was also right about saving lives. "I'm sorry, Pinwar. I'm being selfish, but you're right. We need to save these people." He smiled. "Eat your soup before it gets cold." He was a nice man. "Pinwar, I appreciate your help. You've done well. I'm surprised they didn't have you cook before they hired me." "I used to cook. I was Menes's cook when he was captain. After they had their disagreement, I asked to work on deck. Menes was not a pleasant person to work with at that time. I think the captain just wanted Menes far away from him so he took on the cook's duties. I chose to be where there was little conflict as possible. I'm glad you're here. Things have gotten back to the way they used to be." I ate some of the stew. "Your stew is very good." I got a little concerned. Do you want to come back and cook?" "Don't worry about me. This is my last trip. I'm retiring and going home once we get back to Almaro. Won't you miss it? Maybe. But I'm an old man and I need a rest. He got up and returned to the kitchen, leaving me to my thoughts and my soup. I was grateful for his help. When I finished eating, I went up on deck to see if I could find Menace. He still stood up on bridge with the captain. It was good to see them together. They really seemed like father and son now. I made my way up to him. Did you eat, Menace? Did you eat? He smiled, of course. Did you eat? The captain asked me. Oh, yeah. I looked from the captain to Menace. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you. Stop it, said Menace. We each make our own decisions. My father is right, the captain agreed. In a way, it opened both our eyes. You reminded me of what a great father I have, and also that I've created him bad for too long over something that happened that I blamed him for. I don't blame him anymore. Good. I looked towards the island. What do you think is going to happen when we get to the other side of the island? Menace answered, We won't know till we get there, but we have to try. He must have seen something in my face as I stared out at the island. Don't be afraid. We've gotten through a lot already. We'll get through this too. I wasn't sure about it. All the bravery I had had earlier had disappeared. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned and went back down to my little room. I lay back on my sling, but I couldn't relax. I was so consumed with fear. I didn't want to go back. I know their families were there, but I wanted all this horror to be over. I killed a man. I didn't want to see anyone else die. Nervously, I tossed around before getting up and running back up on deck to watch before it got dark. The volcano lit the sky with a red haze as the sun went down. We kept a good distance from the beach, but it was getting darker the further we went. Hato stood next to Tarber at the wheel. He pointed ahead of us. The volcano had not reached this far yet. In the dim light, we could see huts and torches lit in the village. They sat on the beach. Whoa, said Tarber. We're at a good distance to drop the boats, Captain. Drop anchor, the captain commanded. Prepare the boats for the island. Captain, I could go oversee the journey with Hato, Tarber suggested. Go. The captain went to the bridge so he could see what was happening. Then he yelled to the men, Light the torches. They need to see us coming. Tarber and Hato were already preparing the boats to drop for the rescue. I heard Tarber ask Hato, How many people in your village? Perhaps 50 with the children. 50? I guess I said it louder than I thought. My mind started thinking about 50 more people on the ship. I turned to Menace. Where will they sleep? Don't worry, Ermia. We can accommodate them. Maybe not a bunk, but we're saving their lives. I'm sure they'll be happy to sleep anywhere. I was still concerned. The captain saw the look in my eyes. Don't worry so much. Menace laughed. You could get wrinkles like me. I had missed my friend. I stood next to him. He put his arms around me like my father. We watched as the boats were lowered. There was one native on each boat to help the natives we could rescue. The natives stood on the side of the ship, rallying them onward. I waved to Tarber and Hato as the boat was dropped over the side. We watched as the boats were closer and closer to shore. Each boat had a torch so we could keep track on their journey. We could see people approaching them as they reached the beach. There were a lot of people. Quickly, the native men, women, and children got into the boats. Children and babies were crying as they rushed to enter the boats. It appeared the women and children were first. Quickly, Tarber and Hato turned the rescue boats back towards the ship. Others waited nervously at the shoreline for the boats to return for them. When the boats returned to the ship, we saw the poor natives and their families. They appeared visibly scared, with having only the clothes on their backs, which even that was little. They were crying. I was crying too. I couldn't believe how many children and babies there were. I felt so sorry for them. They were as afraid as I was, but didn't know what was happening. Probably just as well. I couldn't imagine seeing my home go up in flames. All these children ever knew was gone. And now they were on a strange ship. I looked back at the island. I could see the lava entering their village. Their huts were going up in flames. I was fearful if the return boats would make it in time. I watched as Tarber and Hato rowed as fast as they could. Men and women stood in the water holding children that hadn't been able to get in the other boats. The lava reached closer and closer towards them. The boats hardly reached shore before the remaining people waited to reach them. I stood praying they got everyone. I think I held my breath in the last moments before the remaining natives were loaded into the boats. The cries continued from the boats and also on the ship. Family members anxiously waited for their loved ones, bending over the rail to see if they made it safely to the ship. Once they arrived on board, the natives held each other, still crying. Tarbor ran to the bridge to take over the wheel. We watched as the island was consumed with lava. The captain shouted to all could hear, Reverse our course! Going home!" It was a bad choice of word. These people just lost their homes. The sailors cheered as they were as anxious to go home as I was. I looked around the crowded deck. Families were still embraced in hugs and continued to cry. I decided we need to help these people with food and water, so I made my way back down to the kitchen. "Penwar, we need to get food and water for the natives." He nodded in agreement. Penwar helped me prepare food for the natives. It wasn't until I looked in our crock of water that I wondered if we'd have enough for everyone for the trip home. I filled up a bucket and got a ladle for the kitchen for them. As I walked back into the kitchen, I said to Penwar, "How can we feed everyone till we get home? I don't think we have enough food." Penwar agreed. I went up to the captain's cabin where I found the captain and Menace sitting at his desk, looking relieved and maybe even happy being together. "Excuse me, Captain, but I don't think we'll have enough food and water for all the natives to make it all the way home." Menace popped up like a soldier, very serious. "Let me see. Not that I don't believe you, but we have to know for sure if we don't have enough." They both followed me as I walked through the hordes of natives that were scattered about the main deck. Women sat on the floor clutching onto their children. Some of them held their babies, who still appeared very scared. The men gathered in groups, mostly conversing amongst themselves. I wondered what Menace and Captain would do if we didn't have enough food and water. One more thing to be scared of. We went down to the supply room below. I opened the crates of vegetables, flour, dried meat, fish, and cheese. They both examined what we had and shook their heads. I led them to the crates of water we had left. "This is it." Menace opened each crate. He and the captain looked aside. "Come," ordered the captain. We followed him back to his cabin. He pulled out some maps and laid them on the desk. Menace appeared to recognize the map on top. Obviously, he knew what the captain was doing. "Yes, you're right," he said to his son. I hadn't a clue what they were talking about. I didn't recognize anything on the map. "Right about what?" I asked. "Brynar Island," Menace explained. "It's not far, and we can pick up supplies, plus maybe some natives would rather go there than back to El Morro. It's a more tropical environment." Even though it sounded like a good solution to our problem, I was homesick. I was almost sick. I returned to the kitchen and told Penwar about the solution. He felt the opposite of me. "Brynar Island. Great. I've heard of it." "Heard what?" "Delicious fruit, fish, and pretty girls." That certainly didn't excite me. "I'll finish up here," I said to Penwar. Basically, I wanted to be done. I wasn't interested in going anywhere else. I knew we had a problem with supplies and this was a solution, but I just wanted to go home. When I finished cleaning up, I went back on deck to see if the natives needed anything else. It was very somber on deck. These people had lost their homes. Children were crying and scared, not knowing where they were or what was happening. After making sure they had food and water, I searched for blankets. We only had a few extra. I had to take from the men's bunks. These people were going to need them as they had nowhere else to sleep. The storage hole would have been a large area, but was pretty much full. It would have been a nasty place for people. I'd seen it. It was dark and dirty, and maybe even rats. I felt so sorry for these people. Children hung on to their parents in fear. The ship scared them too. None had been on a ship like this before. The men, however, were curious about the ship. I watched them walk about the deck to explore, the women and children all huddled together, looking consumed with fear. Who could blame them? They just lost their world. They basically covered the entire deck, sitting or lying down with their children. In order to walk around the ship, I had to step over them. Menace saw what I was doing and came over to help me distribute blankets. Do you think they'll get off at Briar Island? I asked him. Hard to say. How would you feel if you lost everything you ever knew? Confused. I think that's a big part. They'll have to start over in a strange land, whether it's ours or Briar Island. Selfishly, I hoped it was Briar Island. That was the voyage home wouldn't be so difficult with all these people to feed and take care of. The ship was certainly disrupted with the natives, and especially the children who seemed scared. Many continued to cry. It had been a long day, and I couldn't wait to go to bed. After all I could do for the natives, I went to my sling. I also had contributed my blanket and every pillow from the men for the babies. Exhaustion crept up on me. I was so tired. I fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke by huge waves rocking the boat. I ran up on deck to see how bad it was. It was raining hard with gusty winds. The natives all huddled together under their blankets. The blankets didn't help the natives. They were getting drenched. I ran to the captain, who was at the wheel. Captain, is it okay if I lead as many women and men as I can into the dining area? He was soaked. Rain dripped off his head and down his face. Of course. If more natives will fit, take them too. Menace walked up behind the captain while we were talking. I'll help. The two of us went on deck, fighting the wind and the rain. We found Chapt to explain that we were going to take the women and children below to the dining area. He explained to them and helped Menace and I lead them there. They were all drenched. I feared the children would get sick. I loaded more wood in the stove to heat water and also to keep the room warm. Menace and I took their wet blankets and hung them to dry wherever we could. Then I searched for towels for them to dry themselves. They were almost naked, so once they dried themselves, there was little to dry. However, I did grab some shirts for the men to put over the children to keep them warm. I didn't want anybody getting sick. They sat mostly on the floor, unaccustomed to sitting on benches. There were so many that they had to perch on the tables. It was a sad sight. They had been heartbroken losing their homes, and now were on the ship that were being tossed her out. Fear spread, especially through the children. Crying was loud with little consolation, as the mothers were as scared as the children. I didn't know how to help except to try to keep them warm. Hatu asked Menace, "What can we do to help?" Hatu went with Menace on deck. Menace directed the men how they could help during the storm. The storm continued through the night and into the morning. Because of cramped quarters, it was difficult to feed anyone else in the dining room. Instead, men ate in their bunk room. It wasn't until late in the afternoon that the rain stopped and we could finally see the sky again. When the rain subsided, I walked up to the bridge, taking Tarber some coffee. He had been on the wheel for a long time. He was grateful for the coffee. Sorry, Ermia. You can call me either. I don't care. The native men lay on the deck below, looking weary. I'm sure they must have been as scared as the women and children below. Hatu tried to be brave as their leader, but I'm sure it wasn't easy for him either. Every time I saw him, I thought of Hai. She must have been proud of her father. I wondered about her mother and finally asked him, "Where's Hai's mother?" She got sick after Hai ran away. She was fearful of the boys she ran away with. She didn't trust the Modrai, nor did I. She died after she heard Pilo had taken me. She didn't think either of us would return. I had gone after Hai. En route, I was captured with my friends who went to help Hai. You know the rest. What a sad story. He lost his daughter and his wife. I felt so bad for him, especially because he was Hai's father. If I'd listened to Hai instead of wanting to dig for a diamond so bad, maybe she would still be alive today. I was haunted by Hai's screams and the visualizations of Goran essentially throwing her body in some ditch somewhere. I'm sure he was too. I walked up to the bridge to Tarber, who was on the wheel. What do you think is going to happen when we get to Briar Island? I asked Tarber. He shook his head. I don't know. We almost lost a couple last night. They aren't sailors. If they don't get off at Briar, it's going to be a rough ride home. Why do you say that? You remember the storms we went through? We'll go through them again. Too many on this ship. He sat as he drank his coffee. You're looking pretty tired. I was feeling tired too. Yes, I am. The children cried all night. See what I mean? I think that the captain should make them all get off at Briner Island for all our sakes. That scared me. I felt so bad for the natives. They'd been through so much. It was a difficult situation for us all. The next 3 days, the weather shined on us. The sun was out and all the natives stayed on deck, soaking in the rays. I think the easy sea and the sun helped. The kids started to play and get curious about the ship and the sailors. We all enjoyed the sunny days, but it seemed there was still a dark cloud hanging over us. Or maybe it was just me. The cloud was the unknown. We had no idea if Briar Island would be the answer for the Ito tribe. I prayed it was right for them. I was fearful of them going with us to El Moro. I worried about the food and the water supplies and the storms yet to go through. I mostly just wanted to go home. The 4th day was also sunny. That was the day we had our first glimpse of Briar Island. As we got closer, I was surprised. I thought it would be more primitive, like the natives' village. But it wasn't. I could see the docks were bustling with people selling their wares, entertainers, and lots of fish. They were a fishing village with a wide array of fish to choose from. I watched the faces of the natives as we got closer. There were none that looked pleased with what they saw. It was another world to them. Tilly is the closest to a city that they'd ever known. Tilly was primitive compared with this. I particularly watched Hatu. He stood stoically watching as our ship docked at Briar's docks. I felt sorry for him. They seemed to look to him for guidance as their leader. Making a decision for his whole tribe, especially in an entirely new home, must be difficult. The captain stood on bridge conversing with Hatu and 3 other representatives of the Ito tribe. Menace was there too. The captain felt it best for Hatu and his representatives to accompany he and Menace to the town. There they would investigate the land for the tribe and also negotiate for supplies. Tarber was going too. I suspected he was going because Tarber has this intimidating presence. Maybe they suspected trouble. Despite that possibility, I begged him for me to go too, since I was basically in charge of the food. The captain finally relented. When we got to the docks, I got excited. Menace, the captain, Tarver, Hatu, 3 natives, and myself left the ship and walked down the wide aisle that was bustling with vendors and customers. This looked like a fun place. People were seemingly happy selling their goods or entertaining. There were 3 young men doing gymnastics together. I loved watching them jump and flip around. Tarver must have seen me gawking at the show and put a coin in their hat that they collected money in. We walked by many fish vendors with amazing-looking fish. They hung strings of fish from their tent poles. Other fish lay in barrels of crushed ice. They also sold shellfish and the shells. It was fascinating. I wanted to try everything. Menace, can we bring back some fresh fish? Menace turned to the captain. What do you think? The captain smiled. Yes, but we have other business first. I was pleased. I couldn't wait until I could do some fish shopping. It was strange walking around. I no longer hid my female self. My hair had grown. I no longer greased it, and I guessed it was evident now that I was a girl. I noticed boys looking at me. I think Menace and Tarver did too. They seemed to walk on each side of me. After leaving the docks, we walked down the street to the office of the mayor of the town of Briar. It was a beautiful town with stone and white buildings with beautiful trees and flowers adorning it. The streets were bustling with horses, donkeys with carts, and lots of people. A very busy town. Along the walk, the captain talked about how he hadn't been there since Menace was captain. Menace warned him before we left the ship that these people were notorious for not giving a fair deal. He said it would be a haggling back and forth, and suggested we do the negotiations, since he knew the mayor, Shiflin. I watched the native men and Hatu looking around. This was all new for them. I wondered if they would fit in here. It was night and day from their village. We finally got to a building with a sign that said, Mayor Shiflin of Briar. Menace led the way, opening the door. Before us, a fat man with his feet propped up on the desk smoking a cigar said, Hello. He looked at Menace. I know you. He put his feet down. Yes, it's been many years. We are in need of supplies, Menace said matter-of-factly. The fat man laughed heartily, his big belly jiggling. Well, we can hardly help you out. We can certainly help you out with that. Just tell me what you need and I'll give you a price. We were prepared. I had made a list of what we would need to accommodate the Aito natives. Menace continued. This is my son, Nellis. He is in charge of the ship now. The captain extended his hand in greeting. And this is Hatu of the Aito tribe. Hatu followed them by extending his hand. The fat man noticed me. Who's this? I'm Ermia, the cook. He smiled. Please, everyone, sit down. We all found a chair in the spacious room to sit, except Hatu and his men, who chose to lean against the door or wall. Menace was prepared to do all the talking. Shiflin, we have a problem. Hatu's people were forced to flee their homes on Rugistan Island when the volcano there erupted, taking out the whole island. He motioned to Hatu. I see, said Shiflin. Terrible. Hatu stepped forward. My people need to make a home somewhere. May I ask if we would be welcome here? That was pretty direct. I watched the fat man's reaction. It caught him by surprise, but he covered adeptly, giving a business smile. Of course! He gazed at the natives lining the wall. How many of them are you? About 50, said Hatu. I think that number surprised him, too. I see, said Shiflin. He paused a moment, as if thinking about something. Then he smiled. You would have to work here and build your own homes. There is some land not far from here you could perhaps develop. Would you like to see it? Of course, said Hatu. Very well. I will have my assistant to help prepare the bill for your supplies while I show you the property which is owned by the town. But you could lease it. Shiflin got up and knocked on the door behind the desk. He called inside. Help prepare a bill so we can talk. I handed him the list. A young woman in her 20s emerged. She was beautiful. She was wearing a beautiful long dress cinched at the waist with a lovely leather belt. Revealed her arms, one with a silver bracelet around it. I was in awe of her beauty. It reminded me of what Pinwar had said. Yes, sir, she said, seemingly very businesslike. She quickly took the bill from him into the room she came from. I could see her sit as she sat at her desk. It was interesting to watch her tallying up the bill. I decided she must be very smart. I never was that good at numbers, something that disappointed my father. I was envious of her beauty and her smarts. Shiflin got up from his desk with difficulty, being he was so fat. I have a cart outside. Let me take you down to the property while she tallies up the bill. Shiflin waddled out to the street, leading us where a horse and cart waited. He motioned for us to get inside. I was enjoying myself as much as I wanted to talk to the assistant. I was curious about the island. The town was at least 3 times the size of Telly. It seemed more affluent under the cart, until the cart reached the outskirts of the town. Then we saw poverty. There were shacks on the side of the road we traveled. People looked very poor. They wore ratty clothes that appeared dirty. One woman was cooking over a fire while her baby lay on the ground next to the shack. Another shack, the whole family sat outside. The woman and her children worked on a woven mat together. The man was busy milking a goat. The land out there was barren except for weeds and rocks. The beauty we saw in town with beautiful trees and flowers was gone. It was bleak looking here. I couldn't believe anyone would want to live out here. This is it. You could work it up, Shiflin said cheerily. Maybe even grow some things if you can break up the ground. I could see the look on Hatu's face as he picked up a handful of soil. He showed it to his men. I could see the expression on their faces. They were not impressed with the soil. There were no trees here like in the town. It was not inviting at all. Fishing is the main industry here. I'm sure some fleets would need workers. I saw the look on Hatu's face. This was not what he wanted for his people. Up to you, Shiflin went on. We'll have to tax you for the land. Menace interrupted. I thought you said the land would have a lease. Shiflin didn't like the correction. Well, yes, but everyone pays taxes, too. You'll have to pay for your materials, but I'm sure we could accommodate you, perhaps on credit. Our terms are low. I could feel that the captain and Menace bristled at this. Menace responded before Hatu could. We will all need to talk about this, you understand? Of course, said Shiflin. Shiflin did all the talking on the way back to town, telling us how successful Briar was and that trade had increased. He'd also suggested that Captain Menace begin trading with him on a regular basis. I kind of tuned him out as I soaked in the town. I wasn't interested in the fat man. He just blubbered about business. I was interested in the shops we drove by. I saw clothes that were beautiful in the windows of the shops. There were so many interesting things here. When we got back to the office, Fina, Shiflin's assistant, was ready with the bill for the supplies. She handed it to Shiflin, who went over it carefully before approving it. He handed the bill to Menace. Menace quickly said, "We will have to make sure this will work for us. We'll go back to the ship and talk it over, you understand." Shiflin nodded. "Of course." I watched Fina, who stood waiting for an order from her boss. None came, so she stood still as a soldier. We said our farewells and headed back to the ship. I could tell there would be no time to explore now. Both the captains seemed particularly interested in getting quickly back to the ship. As suspected, Menace was not happy with the bill. Once back on the ship, we all went to the captain's cabin to discuss the bill and the land. Menace took over. "I told you. I know Shiflin. He's a shyster. He's charging us almost twice what it's worth." "Why would he do that if he wants to do business with you?" I asked. "He'll always push for more. We must have a counteroffer. Amir, were you conservative with your list?" "I think so. You look and see." "He would know. He went over my requests. You did a good job. We'll use this list, but I have to make a counteroffer. We don't have a lot of choice. Much depends on you, Hatu. Do you think your people would want to live on that island?" Hatu and his men looked sadly at the captain. I could see Hatu was disappointed. "I don't have a good feeling about this place. I'm sorry." "Don't be," said the captain. "I don't have a good feeling either. Let's just get the supplies and go." "What about the men? Do you want them to have a free night in town?" Tarver asked. "They may need it for the voyage ahead." "Of course they can, but I want the ship out in the morning." Hatu walked up to the captain. "I know this is difficult for you. Do you think we would be welcome in your town?" "Absolutely," I said. "People are nice in El Morro. That's our hometown." The captain smiled. "You're a smart girl, Ermia. Yes, I do believe our town would treat your people well. Hatu, it may not be like your village, but I think you could find happiness there." Hatu smiled. "Thank you." Menace returned to Shiflin to make counteroffer while the captain alerted the men to the night of leave. They were all excited. I guess Penmore told them about the pretty women. I asked Tarver and Axe to accompany me on the island. Menace made it clear he didn't want me going alone. After much coaxing, he consented for me to go. I wanted to get some fresh fish, so Tarver and Axe agreed to go with me. I couldn't wait to explore some of the shops that I'd seen earlier that day. Briar was a trading town and had various types of goods there. From what I saw earlier, they had very interesting things that I'd never seen in my town. Tarver, Axe, and I walked down the docks, which were a hub of activity. I wanted to try some of the sweet cakes the vendor sold. Tarver treated Axe and I to one of the delicious cakes. Of course, Axe had to suck on them, but he didn't care. We were all enjoying our excursion through the various vendors. When we reached the end of the docks, Axe turned to Tarver. "Come on. I want to go try their beer. I heard they have the best beer in the world." Tarver thought for a moment. "We can't take Armenia into one of their pubs." Then Axe turned to me. "How about you just wait outside while we have a pint? We won't be long." I had no problem with that. I loved watching all the interesting people. "Sure," I said. Tarver hesitated a moment. "No disappearing like Telly." I wasn't carrying no bag, so nobody could steal from me. "I have nothing for anyone to steal. I'll wait right here." He thought for a moment, and Axe interrupted. "Come on, just a pint." "Okay, but just one." When we reached the pub with the big tankard emblem on it, Tarver turned to me. "You must not move. Just wait here. We'll be out in a few minutes." "Sure." I could see the look on Axe's face. He was so excited to get his beer. I thought it was funny. I also was glad he was enjoying himself. I felt so guilty about what I'd put he and Minnis through. I watched as they entered a pub, then directed my gaze towards the shops. Across the street was a pottery shop. In the window there was a gorgeous blue pot with an intricate gold design on it. I moved across the street for a better look. A pretty woman came out of the shop. "Hello, may I interest you in one of our pots?" "That blue pot is beautiful," I beamed. "Would you be interested in purchasing it?" I thought about it. My mother would love that pot. I don't think I'd ever seen one so beautiful. "How much?" I asked. "For you, 10 gold pieces." That was a lot. I started thinking about how much money I'd earned on the ship. I felt I could do it, but I remembered Menace had said they were not fair here. I didn't know how to negotiate the prices, so I thought I'd just go get Menace. "I have to think about it," I said. "I'll hold it for you," she said with a smile. I decided to go get Menace to help me. He and the captain would have to pay me a little in advance for me to get it. I looked at the pub, and since little time had passed, I decided they'd be there for a while. I didn't want to wait. I'd be back before they came out. It wouldn't take me long to get to Menace, so I ran back towards the docks. It was a very busy street with people shouting their wares and loud music playing. It also was so crowded it was difficult to get through. In my haste, I tried to avoid the crowds by walking on the back side of the booths that led to the docks. It was still noisy, but easier to run there. I was less than a block from the docks when 2 men came on each side of me running with me. I felt very uncomfortable and looked around to see if other people were there. There was not. We were on the back side of the booths where there was no activity. "What's the hurry?" said a young man dressed like a lot of the sailors with a tight shirt and wearing a knit cap. I kept my pace, trying not to show my fear, then gradually running faster. I didn't like the looks of these 2 men. They both looked like sailors and were probably in their 20s. "Slow down," said the second man. The first man demanded, "Yes, slow down, girlie." Then before I could take another step, they each had me by the arm. They picked me up so my feet dangled. I screamed, "Stop it! Let me go! Help!" Then all went dark.